And then Greg's phone goes off on cue.
Just after we told him to turn off the phones.
And I've been thinking...
I'm in the podcast. Call me later.
Oh, this is going to roll today. I've been thinking a Carnival of Randomness could apply actually to the weather in this town, the way things have been going. But you know what? It can mean whatever you want it to mean. And we have in this Keith Richards 70s chic Greg.
Darling.
Greg is here.
Yeah, well, you know.
So we actually did Keith Richards' time. We were here. We said the show started at 11 when it started. Actually, at 7, so in the morning, so you'll be here. But I'm going to turn it over to our... I just
slept here all night, so I'd be on time.
Our guests deserve a more erudite introduction, so I haven't had my coffee yet, so I'm going to turn it over to our maestro.
What?
Yeah, that was a big word. That was big word.
Greg, your drummer will stick to the one syllables for you, dude. But we'll turn it over to our occasional, member of the show. He's part of the family. Here he is, between making Christmas cookies, Ken.
Good morning, everybody. Ken Colombo here. How's everybody this morning at the random Carnival of Randomness?
It could be better. My stomach kind of hurts and my arm.
Oh, God, Greg. Always got to put up with Greg. And we have today, we have a topic today, and the topic today that we're going to discuss is lists. We're going to talk about lists, and to that end, we have Mr. Greg Lists. Not Brahms.
Oh, no,
not
Franz Liszt.
Oh, I thought you said Brahms. And I said, no, not that Liszt.
Yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going
I thought you said. I thought that was actually pretty clever of you to say that.
And you know who his daughter was married to, right?
No. Shopping? No,
How do you
I don't.
keep it in?
Oh, shit. All right, stop, or we'll never get through this. I would like to introduce Greg Bell.
Hi, Greg.
Greg is the creator of Jazz Rochester, the ever-popular website that will tell those of the jazz world, jazz aficionados, as we say, where to go, who to see, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who's playing around town. And also with us today are Randy Fluker and Christine Piano Thompson, who are the purveyors of the Get Your Gig list that has been out now for some 10 years. 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Which covers who's playing where, what, throughout the greater Monroe County and out further away venues. So there we have it. We got us a show.
I'm very glad that you guys are here and you're putting that list together because it's really hard to find a free time now. So
they actually went out of print several years ago.
I understand that. But I always used to joke to people. I'd say, where am I playing? I don't know. Let me look at a free time, see if I'm playing.
My one free time I do have a free time at home because I actually had Rita Coolidge sign it when she was on the cover and she played here.
Hey, does anybody remember Minstrel magazine? I still have a couple of those. That came out.
Let's talk about lists. You want to start with questions, Rob? Or?
No, you could go on.
All right,
I'll make one observation, though. Like I saw Randy has a Meg Williams shirt. Meg's playing at Smoking Hot Chicks in a week on the 17th during the afternoon, free plug.
Nice,
but when I would always go, walk my dog or anything else, being sort of an underground music person, for lack of a better term, and I would run into somebody out, in the burbs, wearing a shirt of a band I knew or something. I wouldn't even look. I'm walking in the woods, and I look up, there's a Velvet Elvis shirt. I'm like, I know them. And he's like, I think I see you around. Then I go, Ryan and Alicia? It's always friends of mine. I saw somebody biking with an Abilene shirt on.
How to recognize your friends and neighbors.
Well, I'm in a zone, walking my dog, looking down at the mud and stuff.
All right. Well, then let's we'll segue right into lists.
You were trying to do the possible on this show, have a steady topic when you hear us two.
I guess
randomness.
I keep forgetting the random part. So I'm gonna. Christine and Randy, 10 years with Get Your Gig On. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give us a little bit of the genesis of that. How, what, when, where, why did that start? What did you feel was necessary to have to do something like that?
Yeah, that's good.
So I just started it listing the weekend only, and just for something to do, and
And it was right after Free Time went out.
and as I was doing the list, I'm like, well, there's live music 7 days a week in Rochester, you know. So I started this list and doing my thing, and it didn't attract a whole lot of attention, but it was gaining momentum. And then I met Christine, and she turned me on to more musicians, and it just snowballed from there.
Going out and going out and
Yeah.
going. It's like I used to say, just
Yeah.
walk out the front door,
Yeah.
and it happens.
I was kind
Right.
of curious as to how you compile it and how you get your information, and do you have like a pecking order of clubs, or do you just call different people, or how do you find out about this stuff?
We look it up.
I mean, I know the bands
So-
tell you sometimes. But
Right. So it's really like the average Joe is like, they have no idea of the venues out there and everything. And I didn't even have an idea of all the venues that are out there. And once you start doing this list and get acclimated with all the venues out there, then what we do is look at it up, and between the venues and the bands, sometimes they send us the what they're doing, but most of the time it's we all look it up.
Greg and I were talking about that a little bit before we came in that probably 95% of the bands or performers don't even promote their own stuff. It's
Right.
incumbent upon you to go out and look for it, find it, post it on their behalf.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good
Actually,
deal.
River Lynch made a good point when he was on here about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were talking about the scene and everything. What he said is that now a lot of bands are going like to cideries and like brew houses out, and what his comment to me almost gets along those lines, where he said, there's a lot of people out there, they don't even know like what the scene is, like clubs that exist or anything.
And
But
it
they'll go to
changes,
these,
too.
and I've seen like some of the shows there. So
True, and even since 2020 with COVID, that changed the entire landscape.
But I
as
will
well.
say,
Yeah.
It's
I will
still
interject for 1 second though. The funniest misprint ever, and I won't say who did it. It wasn't any of you. But okay, the one time I have a picture of it, I had to show my friends. I've seen Jason Isbell like 10 times. He's playing at CMAC, right? So I look in, just what I looked in. I'm not going to say what it was. I look, and it said Jason Isbell listed at Firehouse Saloon. Now the Angry Goat, he's playing at the Angry Goat, and I'm looking. I send it to my friend. And my friend's response was, "Wow, the Goat's getting some big names these days." Could you imagine if somebody actually didn't realize and went and like, "Where's Jason Isbell? Here's a CD to
want our
play."
money
bait and
back.
switch.
I've made a similar mistake myself, where I put in Herb Smith, the trumpeter.
Oh yeah.
His jazz trio was playing somewhere, and I wrote down Herb Ellis
Oh wow.
and published it. And then, who's been dead for, I don't know,
Right?
quite a long time.
Herb
Back
summed
from the
up
grave
jazz
tour?
to
I
me.
don't know.
Herb summed up like the feel of jazz to me at his last show I saw with the trio, where he's playing a song, and then he stops. He goes, that was the best ever we've ever done. It's like the improv of jazz and everything. It's like you hit that moment
never the
where
same.
everything's just on.
Never the same.
Greg, what is your genesis on doing the list for Jazz Rochester?
Well, I wanted to learn how to use do a blog back in 2005, I think.
Wow.
And I knew I needed to limit, because I have a day job, had a limited amount of time. I tried to get a genre, because I love all sorts of live music, but I wanted to. Rochester had such a lively live music scene. I wanted to kind of use that as to learn how to do that, Twitter, and all sorts of other things. But
Where did you go at first to start mining all of the different?
back then,
Newspaper.
DNC still had a few. City, I've always used. City had been and at that time, Free Time.
Free Time was still there.
But after a while, as I began to meet and get acquainted with more and more of the jazz musicians, I get more of my stuff that way, either through them directly or through a few venues still that are promoting, pushing out jazz more than once every month or so.
Has the scene changed as far as is it getting a little more not to use maybe a bad word, but mainstream as far as like, are more people just, oh, Jay, let's go hear some jazz, or is it still a niche?
No. Well,
sort
one of the
of
things
thing?
that the pandemic had an effect on was it's limited to some extent by pay.
You're right.
Because working jazz musicians, they like to get a certain amount. So you see a lot of duos now, and a lot of
Right.
and a
Early
lot of,
shows and stuff.
and a
Yeah.
lot of early shows. Most of our shows are in restaurants, and almost all of them are outside the city limits.
Right. Okay.
But
Fair enough.
that's somewhat of a change. There's fewer out of town artists coming in, except for the Jazz Fest. My side is really focused on the other 356 days. Of the year.
Yeah. Right.
Well, to that end, I was just going to say, I really, because you have a bona fide website. Jazz Rochester is a bona fide website.
We'll make sure to get all that in at the end, hopefully.
No, yeah. Well, it's jazzrochester.com, right?
That's it.
There
If
you
you
go.
type
Thank you very
jazz on
much.
Rochester into Google,
Boom, there it comes.
I'm on top.
But
so.
I'm going to use the word robust, which is kind of, lame. But it is, because it not only tells you who's playing where, but links to all the other places about town, and then some. I mean, you've got a lot of information that's on the site for anybody
I
that's...
have links to artist websites, local artist websites, and links to the venues.
The
and links
venues,
to. I have a link to the musicians union.
It's
like, just different.
So that number's going to be
music
handy
related.
for me to call so that I
Bob
can make a
Shop.
complaint because we started so late, right?
That's it, right? Yeah.
Have you found that the artists are reaching out to you now, as far as, hey, let them know we're playing here or whatever?
They some do, some don't. Some don't need to,
Right.
because they always fill up places. Some venues don't need to.
Right. Like getting back
and-
to that winery thing, that kind of like it's that whole chicken and egg thing. People sometimes go to certain places because, well, there'll be a band there. Other people go, well, I want to hear this kind of music, so we're going to go to this place. Do you have any thoughts on like how people pick going to hear stuff?
Gosh, I think it's pretty random. Because a lot of stuff here is really at restaurants. They're going out to eat.
Right.
There just happen to be.
And there's
that
just
does
something
limit
there.
the kind of jazz you're going to hear. And there's a lot of jazz communities in town.
Right.
And not a lot of. They don't always talk to each other. They don't always consider that each other is playing jazz.
Yeah.
So
right.
there's
Well, we're
there
playing
are
standards
places I
and
don't
stuff,
hear
yeah.
about because they don't expect that I would want to list them. But I'm not the jazz police. I
Jazz
like
Put it up. That's
The
right.
jazz buddy.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something too a second ago that since the pandemic, that has, I think, affected all of us, is when we go out to these clubs today, so many of them used to be no charge. You go in and then you buy your food and your drink and your so on and so forth, and that was good. It was good for the business. It was good for the band. They were paid off that, so on. Now it seems like a whole lot of almost everybody's got at least a $5 cover.
Yeah.
Places that had nothing, and that, of course, we know the food and the drink is pretty much double.
And the
this
$5
year's.
cover is now $10.
Well, you're right. Yeah,
But there's
everything.
another point I want to make too, like saying about knowing about shows and publicizing them. People would ask me, like I'd say I saw a show, like how did you know they were playing? My answer would always be, well, I know the musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I look at
They
the
call me at 3 a.m. and bug me.
And
I look at the list.
And you think of like the fruitful scene we have around here, because I remember the day, I'm old and broken down now, but in the day I'd see Ken out, we'd be all week, go, where you going next? Where you going
Yeah,
next?
yeah,
Be like
yeah.
3 shows.
Yeah.
Friends
Some
of mine
people-
would move. You'd think, like one of my friends moved to Atlanta. You would think Atlanta vibrant. He would say, the scene, it's nothing like here, like in
Yeah.
terms of me
Yeah,
like
we
see
heard a
stuff.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be common for me before COVID to sit down. I'd go through Randy's list. I'd go through Greg's list. I'd take a look, or special friends that were going to be playing. I would logistically create my own little "What am I doing tonight?" list, and I might start off at Danny's, at Abilene's, and then swing over to the Little, and then someplace I'll stop by, coffee shop that's got somebody else on the way home.
I had the one.
You're like the
Little.
head hopper of the Rochester music scene.
I saw a show at the Little. I go over to Abilene. I think I see you. I go, "Where's the Spirit?" Oh, it's Spy Bar. Go to there next.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
It's like,
Spy Bar, nice. I love that.
it was Spy Bar, though. I think Spirit Room was where
That
Spy
was a
Bar
cool
was.
place.
Before it was a spare room. Yeah, and you would plan out your night like that.
Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to ask Randy and Christine because they're still going out a ton.
Yeah.
You know, every
We
night,
tried.
you know,
We
yeah,
tried.
and I got to hand it to them. I mean, I know the drive from Rochester to Williamson because we had the family cottage in Sodas for all those years, so I know that 45 minutes for me to Sodas back and forth, and then you're going home, and then many times coming back again.
Yeah.
You know, God bless your credit card for the fuel. And all.
I think you provide a great service. though,
Well,
what
no,
they're
there's no
doing.
question. As I was going to say, what are you seeing when you know these guys are eyes and ears in the clubs right now that we would frequent so often? Are there less participants? Is the attendance down?
No.
Are people buying and spending the money? Are they doing? Are they helping in this whole thing shake off the dust and get recovered again?
Right after the pandemic, it was slow to get people to
Slow
come out
coming
again.
back, yeah.
This past year, this past summer, it seemed to be, it was steamrolling. Everybody wanted to be out. They were out, and everybody got work, and it was really busy summer. So I expect next year is going to be even busier. So, but yeah, they're out there.
Barring any unforeseen,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
you know, fooling around. that
Right.
everybody's gonna
And you
do.
talk about the wineries and the
Yeah,
breweries.
yeah.
All of them had outdoor music
Yeah.
all summer long.
Right.
And so
we're
some of
seeing
them were
more and
new to
more of
us
that.
to list.
Yeah.
So we had to
The
pay,
Route-
a little
The
bit
Route
more
14
attention.
tour.
There's this, like,
yeah,
place-
exactly.
Yep.
A couple of friends just played at one of the cideries in Hector and another I know in Naples.
Yeah.
But I'm at the point where I'm just like, this is just too far for
Well,
me.
it is. I mean, you're going to go
I
down
used
there
to
and have
go
a couple
trip-
cocktails and then drive home
Exactly,
from Naples.
yeah.
I mean, I would go to
Right,
Albany. Like I
right.
used to say, within 4 hours, I used to go. Like I would always make a pilgrimage to the Hollow to see Michaela. But now I'm like 4 hours, and I'm thinking, okay, if you're playing in Buffalo, that's like an hour maybe.
Yeah.
And a lot of these craft beers are no joke.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, they're 6 and 7 and 8%. I mean, are you kidding me? You know?
And to Uber
No, I'll
somewhere
tell you,
that
like-
far?
No.
No, they can. You know, Uber can
Right.
because I own a carpet cleaning business, and what happened was we broke down by Rome, and we have AAA, right? So the thing was, we called them. They couldn't because of the company. It was like we ended up in New Hartford. We got Uber. We Ubered home from Rome, New York,
Good
Yikes.
luck. Good luck.
hearing dance music the whole way, and now I've learned the thing that if I'm paying, you're going to play what I want.
What was the bill? And then we'll get on to the
Okay,
next
no, it was
question.
actually, take a guess, okay, if you want.
$90.
150. There were two of us, and I wasn't complaining.
There you
The
go.
walk would have taken a little while longer. Yes, I could walk a long way, but still.
Well, so with that, I won't interrupt your question.
No, go ahead.
But so what you just said about not having to drive from here to there and this and that. So do you think that's created more of a local thing? Like you think the people that are in Naples and that surrounding area
I
is
think
that
they're
like the
doing
place
well.
to go?
No, I think they're doing really well. I
Yeah.
mean, several of the folks that I follow in the Buffalo area.
I mean, it's
Maria-
created different places and different
They're
things. right?
also benefiting too from this. We'll use the word renaissance post COVID, right? Maria Sebastian has been from just knowing her. I know her, and we've met and talked and so on. But then following her and seeing what she's doing and what Tom Stahl is doing and all these other folks in Buffalo, they're also filling a robust market like it's happening here, where people are waking up again and starting to go out and partake in in the activities and in the music.
Well, I have to shout out to my good friends Chuck and Jeremy for what they're doing at the Riviera Theater in Geneseo.
There you go. That's
Oh,
one
yeah.
of them.
And again,
Yeah.
that's
That's
like
one of them, yeah.
Now I have the curse where every time I'm going to go, and it's like about 45 minutes, the weather says I'm not going.
yeah.
And that's the problem. But I also think sometimes, like if you're in a small town, maybe there's not as much to do. So when something comes, you all go. And I don't think in terms of, okay, if it's not like it's been when I've been going there, it's not that far of a drive, and it's not bad. It's a beautiful venue to see music.
Very cool. I got a question I'm going to ask both of Greg and Randy and Christine. Do you see in the age of technology that we have today, we've seen how lists can be compiled every which way but loose, databases and so on. That's what everything is about today. Any way for you guys to automate to some degree how your lists would populate on your sites to help cut back some of that labor intensiveness that you...
Good
Sure.
question.
Yeah. No. I mean, in my
Go ahead,
case,
Greg, you start.
that's possible. It's I've kept to the thing because what I have is limited. You know, there's not that many and because of the format I'm in it's actually a blog. So reverse chronological, and I don't post much of anything else.
Do you have certain criteria that you have to meet to keep it a blog
Oh well.
versus a website? Or,
Well, it is a site because
it's on the site.
it's a URL. It's
Right.
got pages that are static. The front page that you come to when you go to jazzrochester.com is just it is a series of posts, reverse chronologically, and I keep the most recent one pinned to the top, and then if I post anything else other than the listings, which I don't tend to, just because I have a day job, but the that one will go out to take the second piece,
Right.
because
Well,
most people that are coming to my site are coming to find out what's going on, and
what would you use? How would you automate it more?
there are ways. I mean, there's software that I could hook in that would be, basically a database, much like Artist Tab on their websites, which would, arrange it chronologically. I mean, I could even do it simply through a Google. There is a way of doing it through
And then it
Google.
interfaces with your site and it brings
Yeah,
in...
but it's hard to skin it so it looks,
Yeah.
and so it looks right. I would have to probably move to a different software platform than I started this one on an ancient one called TypePad. While I've been able to redevelop it through them because they have some, so that it's what's called responsive, so that if you look at it on your phone or on an iPad,
It looks the same.
it doesn't look the same, but it
It'll-
flows.
yeah, right.
It flows into it for the most part.
Right.
And the other way, I distribute it in a number of different ways too, through Twitter and Facebook and.
Well, that's a great point. Randy and Christine, have you entertained the Twitter... What's the other one? Twitter...
Instagram.
Instagram.
And
No, we are not on either of those.
we both also have full-time day jobs.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
And
exactly.
we do this list,
Yeah.
which is
And-
another full-time
And
job.
we are kind of computer inept, so
Yeah, I mean, we know the
Right here.
basics.
That's why I have somebody
Yeah.
else posted it.
We know the basics, but
yeah.
we've been trying to get a website up and running. But our biggest problem is we want a calendar on our website, and it's hard to get a calendar that works.
Right, and it works the way you want.
And works the way we
Yeah,
want it to
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And this is a chronic problem. I can remember
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago, I was on a St. Ambrose community church. Well, I was on their website for the church, and we were building it from scratch. It was great. It was a great experience. And then it got to that calendar piece, and holy Christmas!
Yeah, and like
Changes the whole thing.
for instance, my listings, because it's a web page, I can put in links. I can somebody wanted me to put their phone number in there for this church gig that was coming up, and I could put in a link that literally if they click it, it calls, or it asks you if you want to call, but I can't do that on a lot of the calendar
Right.
apps or bookends. They have to hook in so that they can feed into a web page, usually through some coding that you throw in.
I remember it took me a long time just to get the Google Calendar figured out.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
send it out to people, and
And
okay,
it's
here's my
very
stuff.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real simple, and it's not, and you can't really make it any better than it is. So
No, actually, Greg, you know what was on last night? Pete Kelly's Blues. Jack Webb is actually, for being all like wooden and everything, he's a lifetime jazz aficionado, and he played a jazz band. It's like just a jazz man.
Did he play?
Well, you know, I don't know if he had a
play an
band
instrument?
of actual people. I don't know if he was really
Did he have
playing.
the crew cut?
Lee Marvin.
Drag-
He talked
Drag-
like it was Joe Friday
Drag-
playing a jazz guy.
yeah,
Yeah, he was an actor before he was in Dragnet, I mean,
That sounded
I've seen him.
Slam on Dragnet.
it was the writing, right?
Well, no, I mean, I've seen him in different movies, and he's nothing like the Dragnet character. I mean, he was just a regular, you see him in other stuff, and he's like, wow, that's Jack Webb, I mean, then you realize the whole thing was an act.
music. Well, I didn't know he was into music.
He was a huge. From the intro, he's a huge jazz fan his whole life, and you wouldn't expect that from like him. You think
Right.
like,
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't think of it.
no, that's why he didn't. Lee Marvin was it in. There's this, and of course it's jazz in the clubs, so he gets involved with the mob. And
That's why I love
Kind of like
watching a
Tommy
lot
James.
of these. I've been watching a lot of the old shows from the 50s and 60s and whatnot during the pandemic, these past couple of years. And seeing the artists that, for example, Carson had on The Tonight Show, and some of the guests. One of the most fascinating things is seeing the guests that have been on this one show, What's My Line?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Right? I mean, I have
Pete
really,
Best was on there.
I've really
Spock
done.
was on there. I just saw one.
I've done a real deep dive on What's My Line, and I mean, if you go back and see the musicians that these people had on, unbelievable.
Even TV scores go like for M Squad. There's
No,
a
I mean,
jazz
I mean,
intro.
You're sitting there and you got Louis Armstrong making a funny voice because he's hiding. He's the guest on What's My Line, and all of them, Ray Charles, and on and on and on. They had all these phenomenal musicians on. And it's really fascinating to see, how do I want to say this, from back in the day. Here we're looking at the show in the 50s. What the relationships were of all these folks vis-a-vis the race of the folks that were going, and the language that was used for so many of the folks. It was just a different culture
Oh, yeah.
portrayed in a whole different way than what we know or accept today. It's fascinating. It's a time capsule.
I mean, I always go back to like some of the older shows you were. There was this one episode, Leave It to Beaver episode that I remember. Well, here's why I remember it. I mean, I watch it, but this one stands out because it was a kind of a base. All those stories were very simple, basic. This is what happens with kids. They weren't that far fetched. They weren't wise ass kids. They weren't smarter than the parents. All that stuff. So there was this thing. There was a new kid in the school. Well,
Good.
there was a new kid in the school, and he kept giving Beaver gifts. A pen, this, that, and the other thing. Well, it turns out they were stolen. He was lifting these things. He was a klepto or whatever he was doing. But there was this whole discussion with Beaver and his mother about how God watches you and sees everything. Now, again, that was fine then, but now you're thinking, would they even broach that now? Would they even go close to that?
Well, what year was, Beaver was done in the 60s, right?
It started in 58 or so.
Okay, but now you go back, I'm talking, What's My Line started, this first show was in 1950.
Right.
Apples and peaches different
Yeah.
between 1950 and 19... So you got
Oh, yeah.
folks
And I always
coming off
use
the
these things. I
war.
always use the context they're done in too.
Yeah.
I don't apply modern day. Because how would they know? You go, obviously.
So like many of us right here, we're just born in such a different era of what
Well,
it is.
I know. Don't remind me because I'm coming up on the big 3-0 in a couple weeks.
3-0.
Shut up. You're on my show. But I've been asked this question that one of the big things I've always had in trying to promote local music, I've been trying for years to do what I can to promote music, musicians. How do you bring sometimes the mainstream in and say, look, we have a lot of great performers here? Because this will happen so many times. And, bless whatever you like, okay? I always say, listen to what you like. Listen to what you don't know, though. You might like it.
Right.
And I would have, like,
That's what I would
so-and-so's playing. One of my friends is playing, and they'd be, I never heard of them. And, well, I said, give them a try. What do they like? Some bands, like I always shout out to the Mighty High and Dry. I'll go, I really can't. It's like Americana, but it's good music, okay?
Right.
Just come down. I'll even treat one time. Now, not for anybody who's going to come up to me now and ask me, but
It's like anything. Food, take a
so
chance. You might like
they'll
it.
say to me though that, well, okay, we have an Eagles tribute band to go to. You want to come with us? And I'm like,
To that point, Greg, what is John Nugent's tagline?
So it's not who you know, it's not, oh gosh, it's who you don't know.
That's right. It's
Yeah.
not who you know, it's
Right.
who you don't
It's who
know.
you don't know.
So I
And
didn't know
that's
that's
You
exactly,
should know.
that's exactly
and like I always
why
say, like some bands, like I always call Nick Lowe a gateway drug, in a way.
Just jump in.
That's
Just
exactly
jump in
why-
and cut 'em
I
off.
will. I will. So that's how we do it. But it's like a gateway drug where, like, you start, okay, it's sort of pop but punk. Then you go from there. And I've always said, like, some jazz, if you, like, maybe do the light jazz, it's like if you read Joyce's Ulysses. You don't want to read it when you're, well, I could read it when I was 9 probably, but it's about humble brag. But you don't want to read it till you've read the Iliad, you've read a lot of other things, so you're not going to know what the heck's going on by the time you're 30.
Good time
read it.
passer.
And now, after interrupting you, go
Wait,
on.
Dave, did Homer do lists?
Homer Simpson.
Greg, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
well, gosh, now I don't remember.
I didn't know you were talking, though. I thought you stopped.
What was
That's
your
why I
question
did
again?
it. About John Nugent, I swiped
about-
his
It's not
thing.
what you
You
know, it's
don't
who you know,
know,
or
yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that.
and John, that's what I like about the Jazz Fest to some extent.
Yeah.
Just because it gives you such an opportunity to hear all sorts of it. He doesn't bring in a lot of out groups, but he does, jazz
they're there.
groups. But there are some, and there's always a few. But to your question about the mainstream, is that, and that's part of their plan. That's why they have free shows.
To get
is
the everyman down
is
there.
to get everybody down there to see these
That's smart.
big free shows with name acts coming from, and this year was like, it was huge because they
fun.
took all the shows they would have had in Eastman Theater and put them out on Parcel 5. But then they go by and hear people playing at the Avangrid stage. They go by and hear people playing on Gibbs,
Right.
they
Osmosis.
hear or they pay $20 and go in and see something.
Yeah, we see
And
people strolling.
because somebody tells them, some of their friends say, "I just saw that you got to catch the 10 o'clock show" or whatever.
I always try to make those shows at that church, that German church, the Lutheran
Yeah,
church,
that's-
whatever. Because those are
Well-
always really cool, interesting out type things.
Wasn't that not a venue this year? Was
No,
it?
that church was.
Yeah, it
It's
was?
no longer the
Whatever.
Lutheran Church of the Reformation. It's now Glory House.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And they didn't have the church on East and
Christchurch.
Christchurch.
Yeah.
They didn't have that one this
Broadway,
year
Broadway.
because they were undergoing some renovations, I believe, and that's usually where the people from the UK come.
Right.
Which, by the way, I miss a lot. I missed that a lot this year because I tend to hang out with the musicians from that because
Because
they
it's
all
close to Moe's.
because they always come to Moe's because they all smoke.
There you go.
Now you talk about
cigars,
lists.
yeah.
How,
Actually,
do-
that
how does
Scottish
John
band
Nugent
I
and
met
those
there, I
guys?
used
How
to
do they
like, I
put
would
that
meet a lot
stuff
of them.
together? How do they?
Yeah.
Well, he's got people. Here's
But
the
they had
difference. To
some of
Greg's,
the UKs at Glory House this
to
year.
Greg's question, he's got musicians that are pounding on his door to get on his
Right.
list, and you guys don't. You're pounding on their doors
Right.
to put
Yeah.
their information on your list.
There you
That's
go.
the
Good point.
juxtaposition right there.
I'm going to cycle back real quick, and we were talking about clubs, and one of my pet peeves is when people complain about the cover charges.
Oh, yeah.
Now, okay, $5 is not a lot. You're losing a beer. Give me a break. So, okay, you get to 10 and 15, that's a lot. But if it's a big show, that's still cheap. I always tell them when I get a little bit upset, I said, you know what? I'd like to just take you in a freaking time machine, plop you, or a teleporter, plop you in New York City, Pay $20 to walk in the door.
And
Pay
then-
$10 a beer,
Yep.
and then we'll see what you got to
with
say.
a 2-drink minimum on the table
Right.
on your
Yeah,
ticket.
and let me see what you got to say about your $5 then.
Right.
You know, because that really bothers me, especially if you're getting the door. I mean, come on. I mean, like when I played at Lux, I mean, I can't believe that place.
Are you seeing any of the venue owners
so
doing
great.
anything differently in regards to paying the bands? Are they changing it up at all?
They're still kind of cheap. I mean,
That
they
would
seem
be
to
a
be.
question for the musician because I don't.
They seem to be a little better. You can demand a little more. Like, I mean, I played last night at the Eagle out in Leroy there, and it was a trio, and it was like $450.
You know, the reason that I asked
So
is
they're
'cause
trying to get a little better with the money, but you know,
Yeah, 'cause
they're trying to save money too. But I think you got to prove yourself too. You go
that's
in there
why we're
cheap,
seeing,
and then
with the jazz stuff, at least in the, we're seeing a lot more duos.
right.
Like out in Farmington, for instance, at the Prosecco, it's almost all duos, and that's because they can't, apparently I don't know how much they pay, so I don't, but
Yeah, a couple $100. Everybody
but
makes money.
but a working musician needs at least $100,
Right.
for each member of the band to make it even worth
The other thing too.
driving to
Right.
it.
The other thing too is a lot of these clubs, a stage is an afterthought. It's like,
Okay.
okay, look at this great job we did doing this club. Oh, wait, no stage. Well, put that triangle in the corner. We'll just put everything there. And then they give you this little 2x4 closet to play in, and you're banging into each other. So
Yeah.
I got another question for Randy and for
there's no room for
Christine.
big
There's
bands.
no
What
electrical
do you
outlet.
guys
Right.
foresee coming up? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go with Get Your Gig?
We want to get the website up and going, but
Yeah.
we want to do it the way we want to do it, and it's challenging.
It's the website is not going to take. It's not going to make life easier for us because we're still going to have to put the information in.
Right.
All right,
But-
so what will it do?
We would like it more popular because a lot of people still doesn't. They either aren't on Facebook, they don't know about Get Your Gig On, and essentially there's a lot of music happening out there, and if any kind of genre you want to hear, it's out there, and people don't know, and they've never heard of. A lot of people are getting fed up with Facebook. They don't like it. And,
Well, and pretty much that's my site's demographically challenged for that too because young people aren't on Facebook at all,
right.
and right now I can't use Instagram for what I do. I use Instagram to every time I'm at a gig, I take a picture, post a picture,
Right.
But and Twitter's not really a place people go to for music.
No.
Right.
I throw them on there anyway, though, on Twitter.
Yeah.
I just share it and throw it on there
Yeah.
because people
Kind of shows
just
people
troll
what
it.
you're
you know.
doing or what you're interested
And most of my stuff, I automatically post it to Twitter, Facebook, and well, not Instagram, but it's but I don't want to pick up another. I don't want to go
more
on
work.
to Snapchat. I don't want to go.
Right.
I'd love to try it. TikTok.
You know what? I'll tell
What
you
am
what.
how am I
I
going to do
refuse to go on
a
TikTok.
video?
I got a couple of
Version of
teenagers living with us, international students, and from what it is that I see them using their phones and how they use their phones and the apps, I'm lost. I mean,
Right.
and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm good with computers.
Yeah.
That I was an IT
You are.
director. Well, you know
Yep,
that.
you are.
I was
Ken,
an IT
help!
director.
Where's the on button?
And I'm lost with what it is that they're doing in the applications.
Yeah.
Because they're not calling to me. They're not in my wheelhouse.
Right.
And
Yeah,
they are
that's-
for the kids.
And I don't know how I would leverage it to do what I do. Basically, all the other stuff is to point people back. I don't, do individual gig listings going out on Twitter, for instance. Even though I've got 12, 11, I lost about 1,000 after Elon Musk.
Oh, did you?
I wonder if it'd be worth getting a third party to like.
about 11,000.
Yeah, we put those
11,000
together.
That's pretty
Twitter.
good.
Well, yeah, but that's all over the world. there's a lot of because there's a good chunk of people that think my website is in Rochester,
Minnesota.
no, Rochester, UK.
Oh,
Where's
So
that?
you always get people that are trying to get their own,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when you have a site that has quite a few followers, or Twitter handle that has a few followers. You'll get people just hoping you'll follow them back, so that your followers will see their site.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to point out, U.S. not UK.
Is there any way you could get a third party, to like set up a template for you guys to and then just pay them?
I mean,
once?
we have a
is.
template.
Yeah,
we use a template.
Yeah.
pretty easy
Yeah.
peasy.
Yeah.
There is a template for a jazz calendar that I could have
Because I don't know that much about it, but I just know that
but
they're out there.
I lose control of it then.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I can't put on
Fair
the
enough.
because I know stuff about these artists that some guy that
You had a beer with Mel Henderson last week. You could put something in there about
That's a
right
good
yeah
point.
or
Make it
I
more
know
personal.
right.
that I can put in links and things like that I can't on some of these other things. So
And to then, and when we're out, we video a lot.
Right.
If it's a new venue, he'll get on and he'll walk around the venue and show you the venue.
and that's
We'll video who's playing just to give people a taste of something new that they've never seen before.
yeah.
And it just gives everyone exposure. It gives the venue exposure. It gives the band exposure. We have like 12,500, so we'd love to get that number up. But that's pretty good. He
That's
started
very
with
good,
just a
yeah.
couple hundred. So.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
Facebook
And that's a
page is
Facebook
about
number,
10.
too.
Yeah.
That's Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, it's a group which
It's a group.
works
Yeah.
for what they do.
private group,
It's a private group, and it works really well because, I don't know if anybody sees my
Right.
my page.
Right.
I've got 1,300 followers, but that's
Wow,
I don't know
that's good.
who's maybe 60 people will see an individual post,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell that because there's an analytics thing that goes on in the background for owners.
I'll ask the both of you collectively: is your, and in Greg's case, the website, in your case, the Get Your Gig list on Facebook, is it doing what you guys wanted it to do? Are you happy with results of what it's providing? Is it still fulfilling something in you that the reason that you wanted to originally start the list? Greg.
Yeah, I mean, so I want to push it further. I've been limited just because of available time. I've got a fairly, demanding job.
How would you do that? How would you push it further? How would you make?
Well, that's where I'm at now because I'm rounding up to 62 now, so I'm starting to think about my second act. And
62. I
I'm
remember
retired,
62.
damn it, I don't want to work.
and who knows, because I work for a large company. I may not have a choice about when that retirement happens.
Been there, done that.
But it's over the next few years, I hope to, I've got a brand. I'm trying to be more active. I want to do more writing in it other than the lists. I basically right now a lot of it is I know what I should be doing, but I don't have time to do all of those things.
We can relate.
I may start sponsoring shows around town.
Ooh.
Or working with venues. I want to do it because it's Jazz Rochester. I want to do it focus on the city. There's only a couple things going. There are a few more things going on in the city now. Weekly things going on in the city itself. But most of those are Eastman students.
Have you ever done a retrospective of how jazz was, like with the Fifth Odd Room and things like that, where it is
I would
now?
have to do that because I've only been here since 2002. I'd have to do that.
I will have to say, my old friend Tony from Empire Comics would bring up
Used
the
to be
pit
big.
that room in lots.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big scene.
You know,
No,
as
it
I
was,
said,
we have a rich jazz history.
being a
and-
little younger than all of you, it sort of I'd have to look back at it and hear stories. But one of the best parts, it's my show. So it can be
Best part
Well, we're out of
waking
time.
up
Thanks a lot for
But,
listening.
is Rob Schwartz in your cup.
I have to say one thing. I became really good friends with Mezca and my friend Nestor. It's a Cuban band that played at Jazz Fest. So we would follow them because of the nonsense with their country. They couldn't get back in the States. So we go see them in Toronto or see them in Ottawa. And I saw Aretha Franklin that time at Ottawa, which was awesome. We had Toronto, which was awesome. But at Ottawa, I saw probably the best jazz band I've ever seen. This was like, I didn't even know they were a jazz band. Stone Temple Pilots played at the Jazz Fest.
I know, right? Yeah, some of the
Crazy
stuff
stuff,
straddles the
crazy
line,
stuff.
but that's
But-
good. Like he said, he gets people.
But
No,
generic
that's
out
question,
there.
it brings
It's
people
not-
in. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen like Booker T and the MGs, Moses, you know.
Well,
but
the Jazz Fest here is like that, and people are always
Oh,
complaining
absolutely.
about, and it's like, no, if we just had the jazz, what is called jazz,
Right.
You wouldn't get nearly the
we would
number.
have about 3,000 people rolling
Right.
around downtown,
Right.
which would be nice, but it's a whole different ball game when it's 200,000 people.
Yeah, I think he's got the
over 9
mix
days.
down pretty
and it's
good.
like
Yeah.
bring in like everything, like bring a nice mix of everything. I saw
yeah.
the Scotalites one year. I was psyched. Like my friends, like the Scotalites are coming. But just a generic question: how did all of you? We've talked about how did you get into all like local and everything, and say this is really cool instead of like just mainstream?
So I've always, when I was young, drinking age was 18. I was
yeah.
in music venues.
What is it now?
21.
It was 19 for a year or two.
Yeah, for a year, and then I went to 21. But I was in venues at 15. You didn't need ID. You didn't,
Ah, the good old days.
Yeah.
I was
So-
playing in them when I was 16.
Yeah, so I remember all the,
Scary.
Black Sheep and all those bands. I
Mob
saw
guys.
all those bands. I was at the Penny Arcade all the time, Island Cottage. So I grew up in the scene. And,
Right.
and I've loved it since I was young.
So it's a carryover.
The
Yeah.
Orange Monkey.
You remember though how Penny Arcade for a while had this scary, you'd be like, you're gonna get killed. I go down there, biker dudes would be eating ice cream.
I know.
I was like, you can't look scary eating ice cream. The only incident I ever had at the Penny Arcade, I got pushed into some guy. He looked like 500-pound ZZ Top roadie, and all he did was say, "Don't push, man." But nothing, But then you tried to look tough, and then your parents had to pick you up afterwards. On the it's like, yeah, we're bad. Hi, mom.
Can I have an ice cream?
I got into scourges and stuff when I was underage because I knew like some people in the bands, but
God, that's funny because I used to play at this place that was on Carter and Norton. It's a rug place now.
Carter
King's
and Norton?
Lounge.
It was
Used to be called the Garden Grill, then it was King's Lounge. And I played there in a band when I was in high school. And, I mean, it was one of those mob kind of joints. And, it was an eye-opener.
like Skinnies, right?
No.
Did you say mob kind of joint?
Yeah, kind of.
Mob?
Mob.
Mafia?
Yeah. But what was used to be funny...
Skinnies was mob.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, same thing.
I'll
But
take Rochester history for $100.
And then, I remember a couple of those owners were like, "You're not that old, are you?" And all this stuff. And I was like, well, so they just kind of let it go.
Back
But
in
I
the
remember
day.
my mother, oh my God, and the teasing never stopped. My mother would come over there. They had a big picture window in the front, and she'd bang on the window and tell me to come home. And it was like,
You're sitting in a joint playing drums and
Yeah.
your mother's banging on the window.
oh yeah, man, I've been, that was a very weird.
That's Bully Greg.
I still get grief about that one. Hey, was your mom going to come get you? But I
Wait till I
wanted
see
to
you play out again.
I wanted to ask Randy and Christine, do you guys, and you too, Greg, do you have a certain, because you said you had limited time, do you have certain days or something? Well,
Cutoffs.
3
Every
hours a
day.
week I'm going to do this, or 2 hours a day I'm going to do
No.
this.
We
It's
work
every
on
day.
ours every day. We're
Every
working
day.
on multiple days of the week, every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd have to
Yep.
do what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I write my listings post every Wednesday.
Okay, there you go. So,
and,
yes.
and now it's basically because during the pandemic, or not during the pandemic, but like after the shutdown, when things started opening up a little bit, there just wasn't enough to put out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
You
just
got pretty
nothing.
sparse.
Right.
Yeah.
So I started gathering goat looking forward, and that's actually worked out for me. So now it looks out a couple months.
Because I know I have to do stuff in the morning, or else by the end of the day, I don't want to do nothing anymore. So I like the morning, I just take care of everything, go on the Facebook, do this, do
I
that.
can remember the past couple of years looking through Randy and Christine's list, like getting to a Monday and Tuesday and only seeing 1 or 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And thinking to myself, oh, good, I don't have to go out.
And I've gotten to the point too where before it was, I used to say this.
What's going on at Ken's house
I
tonight?
used to say this about the bug jar. I like to tell like Bobby when I go there, like Bobby T. I go, remember when the shows wouldn't even start till around like 12:30?
Well, you know what? To your point, that's another good point. That has happened.
Starting earlier.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yep.
I mean, 5:30, 5
Yep.
o'clock. I'm seeing some shows.
Yeah.
And they're done by 7. And you're what are you doing the rest of the night?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Or
can
you-
see
yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10. But it used to go 10, 11, 12, 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
At least 1 or 2.
And it allowed, and it can allow you to hop a little, which
Yeah.
you just.
is what we
I
do.
mean,
That's
I
true.
did my first hop since before the pandemic. Went to see something at Record Archive. I saw Bill Tiberio at Record Archive, and then I went to the Bop Shop.
I wonder if that's
so-
by design to get people to go out to
I
more
don't
things.
think so. I think it's just coincidence that everybody pulled
I think it was a
back.
necessity that came out of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
I
don't
actually
want
did
to.
I did my one hop like recently too. I saw Alyssa Rodriguez and I saw Grease Creepers at the bug jar.
But people don't want to stay out
Yeah,
late
yeah.
anymore.
Well, yeah,
Yep,
no,
that's
really,
right.
really say people
Yeah,
don't want to.
Yeah, they don't want to stay out late. And DWIs are
Nothing
and-
good happens
yeah.
after midnight.
Right.
Right.
So
What do you foresee? Just speculation with we're winter's doorstep now.
it tends to slow down.
Yeah.
The
Not
horse
a lot,
latitudes
though.
of January.
Yeah.
January and
yeah.
February.
You know,
Hibernate,
everybody's coming home for the holidays if they're on the road or whatever. But locally, yeah, I mean, everybody's just staying, getting through the holidays, and then once January hits, okay, got to book for summer. Gotta reach out to the venues and gotta reach out and
Yeah, so
get our summer calendar.
Have you
going.
seen a change in the New Year's thing? Because I haven't played a New Year's gig in
Yeah,
forever.
there's not a lot
It's a little
happening.
sparse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're mostly a lot of the jazz musicians in town play private gigs. For
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm saying afternoon on New
least
Year's
that's what
Eve.
I'm
That's what
saying.
I'm saying.
I
Afternoon
wouldn't
on
be
New Year's Eve.
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I always
New Year's.
didn't really want to go out New Year's Eve like the past years before COVID. But last times I did, it was actually pleasant because there weren't many people like drive. I'd always worry about idiots all over the road.
Right.
It was actually quiet, which I was glad of.
And a lot of the bigger bands, if they're going to do New Year's Eve, they do a package deal at a hotel.
Right.
So you don't have to drive afterwards. You stay right there. But
That's the way
it's
to do
still
it.
sparse. It's very
Yeah.
few.
I would
Yeah.
believe that. I really would.
Yeah, but this is. I have to also say thanks to our guests for helping promote music. Just
Absolutely.
Yes,
that's what
thank
we're all
you
for.
so
Absolutely.
much.
That's
'Cause,
a big kudos to
And that's
these
all I
guys.
tried to do. Like I couldn't carry a tune if you help. Like if I had people carrying the luggage, but I tried to promote local music as much as I can.
I want to address one thing before we sail off here.
That you mentioned the beaver.
No,
Yeah, you going back to the beaver?
I'm not getting hurt. No,
All right.
I'm not getting tough on the
Stay
beaver.
away from the beaver. Get to your point.
I wanted to address Randy and Christine's much needed rules of etiquette
What are they, Greg?
on the site. Well, not bullying, keep your opinions nice, and because people get on there. It's not a bully pulpit, and it's
Totally
not
the
a
place for political talk.
no.
No.
It's like okay, you don't like the band, great, don't go.
Right.
But you don't need to ruin it for
Don't
anybody
bash
else.
anyone.
And I just
That's-
think it's
that's
great
what I-
that you
yeah.
pointed that
That's
out.
what I try to
numerous
say on
times.
here. Everybody likes what they like. We're a positive show. We don't want to bring up positive music. We don't want to bring up politics and music. And I want music to bring everybody together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go out and have a good time. You don't care. You don't want to talk about that crazy
That's
stuff.
why Bono never comes on.
Plus, he can't he's
Well,
been off.
did Bono cancel here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Bono.
Yeah, we've been trying, but his agent's tough.
But also too, I always say I got called hipper than thou one time, like a music snob. Like what you like, okay? And I
Right.
just try to say what I always say is, okay, if I don't like it, okay, it's just not my taste. for whatever reason. If you like what you like, it's not like a competition.
But I think
Right.
it's
People
important
like what
that you
they like.
point those things out. I
Yeah.
mean, because people are just stupid online.
People want to
Try
argue
to
about
keep it
anything
civil.
these days.
Yeah.
And I think there's like this negativity, like any movie comes out, you got to hate it. You know, I got to hate this, hate this, hate this.
No.
I haven't had too much of that on my
No, like Taylor Swift, it's like somebody's like, well, I would like to sell as many albums as Taylor Swift.
because people don't get all incensed about.
Yeah.
So they do about whether jazz is things that happened around the 50s and 60s and stuff, but they don't actually argue about it.
No, it's like me.
But they could.
I'm
But
a-
they
Oh,
could.
they
I've
could.
had
I'm sure they
conversations-
have
I've had
arguments
conversations
amongst
with
themselves.
jazz folks that they know their stuff.
And I try not to, I've got a broad ear, and while I do like what I like, I try not to impose that on other people. So
We're the same way.
And not
as we-
everybody's
What
gonna-
is your of the jazz spectrum,
yes,
Greg? What is your niche that you go to? What is your go-to niche?
man, I tend more challenging, but I don't have a.
Are these
specific-
sphincter saxophones?
Well, a few honks here and there.
Hey now.
But I like bands that do that, but are also it's not all that. They'll have an out portion and then bang, they're in a groove.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of bands out there and a lot of artists out there that are
Oh, crazy, phenomenal.
Yeah.
I have one
But-
for you, which I'm sure you probably heard of because I know you know a lot more than I do about jazz. The Die Like a Dog Quartet.
I've heard of them.
You could go. I asked Tom Cohen one day. I go and take me out there on jazz. Take me really out there. It's like 45 plus minutes nonstop of what you just said.
Who is this person?
The Die Like a Dog Quartet. They might be German, and the way I learned it, I just would tell Tom Cohen, okay, I want something way out there for jazz. I want to open my mind on this.
I'll give Greg one that stuck from Jazz Fest. Well, many that stuck, but two that stuck prevalently for me. Girls in Airports,
Yeah.
still listening, and Shake Stew.
Uh-huh.
Still talking to Lucas,
Yeah.
the guys in the band. And this is so cool. This is what happens. We can talk about this a little bit in the music community. You get to know these folks. Now, these people live in Germany. But now, because of social media, I'm talking to these guys like
Yeah.
they're living down the street.
Yeah.
Like I
Well,
said
then
with
also
Nessa.
say-
Yeah.
And I also
it's
said like
so
the one thing,
cool.
and I appreciate most like a lot of artists. I'm like, okay, it's music, but seeing Mose Allison in person for me really meant something because I love Mose so much, and just seeing him play, and he dressed like this, like this purple jacket, like claw hammer, sneakers. It was great. And just for that, and I think people can appreciate like stuff like that. But I've also learned, like that. But if you want to see girls in airports, it's Rochester General's not too far if you want to pay the parking. You look like a weirdo though doing it.
I have a question for Greg.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. No, please.
This is kind of a weird thing. This is one of my own.
Wait a
little
minute. Is it
things.
appropriate?
It is.
All right. We have mixed company.
How do we get
Okay.
all the people that come to
Randy's
the
here.
jazz festival? How do we get them to come downtown the rest of the year?
You don't.
That's
You don't.
It's a good question.
Because they feel safe because there's
Say the same
cops
thing.
and there's
That
this and there's
question is
100,000
asked
people.
every year.
Yeah.
that's
And it's not getting any better.
That's. I mean, if it's not safety, that it's parking.
Yeah.
I mean, I came here from Chicago in
Right.
2002. So nobody here knows anything about traffic.
I've been to Buddy Guys Club.
and nobody here knows. I mean, I used
Yeah,
to
sure.
park a mile away from a
Right.
place I was going to see music,
Uh-huh.
or because if I went into a lot, if there were any lots nearby,
Your car wouldn't be
it
able
would be
$20.
$20, $30, and that's what
Yeah.
I had in my pocket to buy a beer or two,
Right.
and pay the cover charge and all the other stuff.
Good point.
That's I think right now safety is a question.
That just always
And
bothered me
it-
too.
Unfortunately, being it's not I'm downtown all the time, and it's really and I came here from Chicago, so I know what to look for,
Right.
when and where not to be, and those things. But I think that some of it's overblown, but there's been recent stuff that's made
Sure.
it feel
Perception.
I
That's
have
part of it, too.
I have a friend of mine who's
And I used to go, like, I visited a friend in Philadelphia, so I know I would go, Rochester's parking, everything, get to Philadelphia, get me back to Rochester, like, in terms of that. But also, too, is there, like, a percentage of people who come from out of town to the Jazz Fest? So you're not probably going to expect to see them, coming in all this way for every
Well,
week.
I don't know what the percentage is, because I'm not even sure. I'm sure they have an idea. John and Mark have an idea, but I think you probably do see some people come in that weren't coming in to see bands that they saw at the Jazz Fest when they played in the city.
How would you know, though, right?
But you wouldn't know.
It's just like a...
It is a perception of safety.
A lot
I
of
think.
it is perception.
That's
The
gotta
thing
change,
is that
And I used to do doors at bars downtown for like 10 years. I know what to recognize, where not to go, how to just and everything else.
exactly. But like that was one of the things when I'm coming here from Chicago again. When I came here, I used to go see stuff at Milestones,
Right.
and I would
love
literally
Milestones.
drive up, park across the street,
Walk across
and then
it.
I was used to showing up early so I could get a place to
Right.
stand, sit or stand, and see the opening band, and I found out soon enough that nobody goes
You're
to
right.
the
It's later,
openers.
right.
I found that out still that way.
And then so I would show up, and there'd be I'd park across the street, pay whatever till 6 p.m. and then walk in, and there'd be nobody there for an hour or so. And then,
Yeah, that's a shame, but that's the way it goes.
But so I mean, it's not. But whereas in Chicago, I would go to see something at Lounge Acts or these places where you'd see kind of some of the out of town bands and things like that, similar to Milestones, and it would you'd be barely able to get in the door 2 hours before the show.
Well, that's a big metropolitan. There's a big cultural difference
Oh, yeah.
in some of these bigger cities because nightlife
No, but
exists
the
in
thing,
other cities, not here so much.
after this has been great, we could do like 4 hours, I'm sure,
I
like we
know.
always can do, but I want to watch the Vikings and the Jets.
There you go.
All right.
So, but the
We'll
thing
let you
is,
go.
now I want to say everything. Thank you very much to our guest, and in a minute we'll say where you can find those. Now you have no excuses not to see these local shows, because now you know when they're playing.
Sorry, we got jazzrochester.com, Greg's site on the web, and he's also got a presence on Facebook as well,
And Twitter.
and Twitter, and
Instagram.
So he's all over those places.
All the same, all with Jazz Rochester.
JazzRochester.com get you there, and with Randy and Christine, it's on Facebook, the Get Your Gig On. And if
Right.
you're not a member of the group, join.
Yep.
We will vet you. He will, and she will vet
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
closely.
Oh, so I'm not going to join.
You can't know.
Don't worry, I know all the musicians. I know the show.
They have a filter for him.
They just got me. No, you know about this. Because of Greg Previous, they just nailed me for promoting like pornography.
Well, stop doing that.
You know what it was, right? You know what it was. It was I put up a
pictures.
Rolling Stones video
Yeah,
from
yeah,
Sticky Fingers. And I'm looking at promoting the pornography and body image or something.
It's from a record album.
Yeah, I put Sway up.
Well, just keep away.
It's just
from,
envy, man. That's all.
keep away from Roxy Music. Then.
That's right.
Oh, I was gonna put Velvet Underground afterwards and everything. But this is sometimes we'll have you on. We'll all do lists or something.
Lists of Brahms and Beethoven.
But it's been great. Thanks for coming down, everybody. And now you had to drive a little
Thanks,
bit.
Rob,
and
for
everything.
having me.
And we'll
thanks.
also we always play music at the end. Jazz wins this time. We had Charlie Ballantine in town. The Bob Shop. I was very impressed. I had a nice talk about him. He's from Indiana and a big Kurt Vonnegut fan who's in my top 5 favorite writers. And he did a jazz album called Vonnegut based on, can anybody guess, like for a stick of gum, what an album called Vonnegut with the songs are based on?
Well, I would think.
It's the carnival, so I don't expect much. So we'll play, and I
Kurt,
think
is it Kurt stuff? Is it
Yeah,
Amanda
Kurt.
Wright? Okay.
Yeah. Bravo, you win the pony.
I guess
But
they can-
these are jazz songs, so we don't want to have anybody listening for 30 minutes.
Do we need to cue Andy?
No, we'll do that. But I will say, I don't think any song fits better for this show, for the carnival, than the song titled "Space Wanderer." So we'll play Charlie Ballantine, "Space Wanderer." And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We'll be
Thank
back.
you.
Bye
See ya.
now.